Okay, hopefully we'll be starting soon here. So hang with us.
I know, it's hard. I like went for 10 minutes and then have to go to the shop. She's not real. Yeah. Lottie was there also.
Yes, I would.
Falsetto is actually. That's something.
I'm happy with it.
We're going to have to start. It's going to be much more simple for me to start.
Also because it's like,
High falsetto is like transmitting with different energies. And she likes it.
Yeah. Okay, turn down the alleyway that's in between those two, and there's a door on the left. Okay.
Very good.
Okay, see you in a second. Bye. Yeah.
It's working. Okay. I think I've actually solved this problem. It's one of the many, bless Shalom, one of the many mysteries he left us with was how to broadcast on YouTube.
Really?
I know. It's like I may have cracked this one.
I know there's some tests. Sounds like you got it independent.
So here, look. See?
Yeah. Aha. Now we're being broadcast right now.
And the link is on Facebook. Everybody forgive me if you're watching this live. We're broadcasting out a little bit early as we warm up and get ready so that the link's working, and I know it's working. And welcome to Yerushalayim, welcome to this class, and give us, be patient with us for another 10 minutes or so.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Something more like and like personally, I just wanted like us to him. I didn't need the whole like. No, it would have been nice to have shown off there because they would have been really good. All really pretty places. But if they had be like before. Or like starting the Saturday. No, I've been twice. Yeah. Right. I remember the first year. It was like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the
And last year, tried getting into gym.
Yeah.
They didn't. This year it was like because they
Oh, this week I wasn't at their meeting. They had a meeting after Ma'arif that they want to do like Shabbat and Karlach weekend.
No, but it was nice.
I mentioned something happening here. He said, "Oh, why don't you do it at our place?" I was like, "Well, we have our place over here. That's why."
The whole point is here.
Right. So it sounds like they probably want to, create some event over there. Yeah, exactly. Oh, really? Nice. I like to hear him teach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have to talk like I said with the arm.
It happens.
They have some
and because I made an effort because I want to show them
which is
I want them to do this.
have classes and whatever in there. They wanted a place to do it once a week in the evening.
42 is
So I think it's something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
If you get Pesach, I might
I'm trying to get a hold of Pesach today.
it'd be easy to get Nissan sometime.
I've been connecting with him a bunch up until Simchat Torah, and then I made my journey over here and arrived after a while.
This is from the guitar.
Yeah, I also think that
On that side?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not necessary.
Anybody that's interested and doesn't already get our newsletter is interested is welcome to their name down.
My dad also sent me the email this morning. I was like, oh my god, I'm actually going.
We should sit together. I don't know what's comfortable for you in terms of places to sit.
My dad gets emails
You say look
about
at
everything.
Yeah, so
Where
why don't you
he just always forwards them to me.
Yeah, I think this is the teaching seat right there. There's one with chairs.
Oh, I don't
Like,
want
I get emails
I know,
about
one
that.
of us too, but
Father
the teacher has
opening.
some.
Right. Like, them, reads them, and sends them on to like the necessary kid. He has an option. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you know what? The truth is that we have a bunch of families. We have the ladies sit on this side and the men on the other side.
So we can adjust them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I've been just busy talking. And paying so much attention to the logistics of it all. But we have, you know, why don't you put out some stools and everything? Laura, you wanna sit next to your husband? Laura, you wanna sit?
That's okay.
Is everybody else named Laura over here?
Will the real Lori please stand
Yeah,
up?
really.
Yeah,
Yeah, ladies, come. Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna be difficult.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to be difficult. Could you get me one of those teachers? I absolutely cannot sit in these kind of chairs. Thank you so much.
This one that way.
Much better. No, so move it. I can't sit in those wooden chairs.
I can't sit on those, like 20 seconds and I can't.
And I'm just, yeah, I can't sit on those kind of things.
Robertson Judy.
I just,
You know what?
Chicago,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
I'm just waiting for you to arrange this. Rabbi Monticello is going to be sitting over here.
Okay.
Do you want to?
Yeah, fine.
So
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you.
I'd just like you to tell me where you'd like me to sit.
What?
Where would you like me to sit?
Where would I
The
like
seat.
you to sit?
Yeah, that's the
There.
spot?
Oh my
Okay.
God.
Front and
That's the
center.
spot.
Your personal band is over to you, right?
No. She works with this.
Okay, good. I'm used to writing all this.
No, that's how it is.
This,
Yeah.
this one,
Closing it open.
Gives me an extra incentive to like be ambitious.
Next thing I have to do is train myself to set up a.
She said,
I have such trouble.
Is this already online?
This is already online. You're already broadcasting.
Okay, you're on the air.
You're live. Whenever you're ready to roll, we
Live.
are ready.
So you tell me when,
It's not even 7:30 yet. 7:49.
The Rebbe should speak first.
Yes. He was like saying,
We have classes here.
Yeah, but it says we have like a little niggas to start us off with.
So, is Rebbetzin Judy here? Well, my name is Nehemia Polen, and this is Rabbi Matisyahu Brown, and I'm so delighted and honored to be here. I'm just feeling the presence of Rebbe Shalom. Shalom. Just wanted to mention that this is my first time here at this particular juncture. So just want to express my gratitude and thanks for many years of learning and friendship and association, learning from Rebbe Shalom, Olav Shalom. So we are here to talk about Hasidic Nigun, and what I'd like.
I'm front and center.
What I'd like to say is that what I'd like to think is that I think the main point is that Hasidic Nigun is a derech avoda. Is a way of service, is a path of service. Now we are blessed with many Hasidic melodies, not only of Rav Shlomo Carlebach, Alav Shalom, Zechrono Livracha, but so many Hasidic groups have and now you have MP3, everything is online, you can get everything. You go to a chasana, there's so much, at least what calls itself Hasidic music. So we are surrounded by it, but I think that it takes work to recover something that we may have forgotten from Eastern Europe, and that certainly Rav Shlomo knew, Rav Shalom knew. I think it partly has to do with, it's not the only cause of this, but it has to the black challenge of amplification, electronic amplification. In Eastern Europe, there were klezmorim, there was klezmer to be sure, but probably maybe, who knows, maybe in Paris or Warsaw, maybe a little bit in the late 1930s, somebody had like some sort of a hookup. It was almost non-existent. And now you go to a chasana, and I don't know about you, but I always put things in my ears. So that means you are almost coerced. You're coerced into the nigun. And that's not what nigun is about, I don't think. So maybe that's the main message. Nigun begins in silence, and it ends in silence. And even silence. That's the derech of the tzaddikim that I saw or learned from or heard others. I didn't mention this. Rabbi Matisyahu graciously acceded to sort of follow my lead. I could equally as well, and maybe more wisely, follow his lead. Next time I'll follow your lead. But so we did a little session ahead of time, sort of going through some of the nigunim and the keys, and again he sort of graciously acceded to the key that would likely work for me. But I didn't mention this one. So the Piasetzner teaching, there's a Piasetzner nigun that I learned. I have some Piasetzner nigunim that I learned from O Hasidim who survived the war. And they were all very, very gentle, very, very slow. So it's about listening much more than it is about broadcasting. So this particular nigun, it comes from Tillim, I think, Peidalet, I think. I have to look at it. Psalm 84. Hareini Hashem darkecha ahalech ba'amitecha. Your way, walk in your truth. Yached levavi li'yirah shemecha. Unite my heart. Something that I learned that Chassid, not far from here, he was a disciple of the Piasetzner Rebbe. He survived the war in Japan, came here. He lived not far from here, actually. And so I once asked him to sing this nigun, and I could barely hear him. Yeah, partly because he was a little elderly, but it was mostly because that's how you sing the nigun. So it goes like this. I don't know if you know this. I mean, now again, I think it's been picked up, but it's. I'm going to sing it the way I remember him sing it with the Polish pronunciation. Yachad levavi nirah shemecha. That's it. That's the whole thing. So, and then it just. So this is a very different, I think, idea of what nigun is to what you often see contemporary, presentations and productions of nigunim. So with that in mind, and we probably prepared other things that I won't remember. You're welcome to remind me or interrupt me at any time. But let's at least do, because Yisrael, right? Mm-hmm. Yisrael graciously also acceded to my request to do photocopying. So since these trees have already paid with their, so why don't we use them? So this is, in other words, it's going to be text study, and we'll do Nigunim, we'll do more text study until we're ready to go. So this is Torah Or of the Alter Rebbe, and actually it's very relevant because it's just a couple of weeks ago. It's Parshas Bereshis, So I always wonder about that Yuval and Yaval were descendants of Cain. Got to think about that. Have you ever heard of Torah on that? It's something. There's got to be Torah on that. They're descendants of Cain, not of Abel, not even of Seth. So, what's going on with that? But this piece says as follows: Yaval hu haya avi yoshev ohel umikneh. Yaval was the ancestor of all the peoples, right? Welcome. Do you have a seat?
Sure.
Okay, fabulous. So, B'Shem Achiv Yuval, and I always wonder about that too. Like, why did they pick names that were so similar? Like Yuval, you didn't do the dishes. No, that was Yuval. Yuval, you left your shoes in the living room. No, that was Yuval. It doesn't make, but what do we know? I'm sure there's going to be a deep Torah for all these questions, but that's probably not what the Rebbe was. I don't know. Maybe he said a Torah Shebal Peh, and the Talmidim decided. I don't know, but in any event, so he said Yuval was the teacher, was the ancestor, and as he founded the idea of having musical instruments, rather stringed instruments and then wind instruments. Right? It's probably not the same. It's probably not a violin, but it's some sort of a string instrument, and ugav is some sort of a wind instrument. Hine Amar Razal, Kol Bali Ashir Yotzin V'Shir V'Nimshachim. So this is just a great deployment of a Mishnah. Much of Masachet Shabbos speaks about what you can and cannot carry on Shabbos, how you can, where you can. There are 4 different domains, right, and so on. So one of the things this is, if you have an animal and considered a burden for the animal, because the animal also is not supposed to carry. So it says v'chol bali hashir, if the animal typically has a chain, right? I guess nowadays dogs should be on a chain. They don't always do it, but they should be on a chain. So then that's the way they go out, and they go out with that. So the shear does not mean the chain. Shear is the neck collar, but it's connected to the chain. So it's a rule in the larger discussion of what animals may and may not have on them. Again, if it's a burden, if they're carrying your knapsack, it might be a problem. If they're carrying their own, they need something warm in the wintertime, then that would be okay. But the Alter Rebbe takes it, I think, actually he says elsewhere that this is from the Mizritcha Maggid, I believe. So he says that perish. So what does that mean? Is to say on a spiritual level. Of course, it means the halacha on the baseline level. That always remains. But he's gonna raise it to another level. He says, Shekol b'china ha'Allah mimahus lamahus kamo migan eden atah v'gan eden ha'elyom. If you're tracking the Hebrew, you all see it. If you're not tracking the Hebrew, I will try to translate it. You won't miss anything. Or you can ask me for an English translation at any time. But if you're comfortable with the Hebrew and want to read the Hebrew, then I want to make sure that you have the place. Okay, you all have the place there? Okay. it's the first column, and it's with a larger print there. Okay, so maybe it's about a quarter of the way down from the top of the page in the first column. Okay, so he says, when you're being elevated, when you're going from one circumstance, from one place to another place, from one spiritual reality to another spiritual reality. He says, "Kamo migan eden hatachton legan eden ha'elyon." This is definitely the language of the Baal Shem Tov. There's a lower Gan Eden, there's an upper Gan Eden. You're going to ask me what is the lower Gan Eden, and I don't know either one, but I mean, I'll try to say something which you should know from the beginning that I have no idea what I'm talking about, so you're free to dismiss it. But I would say that the lower Gan Eden is where you still retain a strong sense of personal identity. Is to say, I'm in paradise, and I know that I'm in paradise, and I have clear sense of who I am as an individual. When you get to the upper Gan Eden, you're so close to Hashem, to the ultimate, that you begin to lose. In other words, it's not about me as an individual. The closer I get, the less I need, perhaps, the sense of me as an individual. I'm going to a higher place. I'm becoming more kalul. I'm becoming more absorbed in and therefore more absorbed in the totality of what really is, and the particulars of. I forgot, I have a car down there on Earth that needs an oil change, and no. You won't be worried about that. You probably won't be worried about that in the lower Gan Eden, but at least, so the higher you go, the less you're worried about those kinds of matters. So, and the Baal Shem Tov talks about this. I mean, in the one letter that we have that the Baal Shem Tov we know wrote, as opposed to what was transmitted from Talmudim, he talks about going in the lower Gan Eden to the upper Gan Eden. And I think I will say also, this is, I just have to share this, that in the Kalonymus tradition, which I've been privileged to learn a little from as well, the Piasetz and the Rebbe was from the Kalonymus line. In the Kalonymus tradition, they say the following. They say that when you learn Torah before Shacharis, before davening on a weekday, then that's the lower Gan Eden. When you learn Torah before davening on Shabbos, that's the upper Gan Eden. So he says, so now back to the Alter Rebbe, do I need to say this? Rabbi Shner Zalman of Ladi, the founder of Chabad Hasidism, the Maggid of was rich, right? Okay, so he says that transition, who are Yedei Hashir, right? It's by means of song. So he's playing on words. So that's the first thing that's going on here. Robertson, can you hear me? Is okay?
I can hear you maybe, but I could hear you maybe a little bit louder, better.
Okay. So I'll try to. So I'll move. So I'll just move. I'll move closer. So yeah. So it seems like a play on words, right? It is to say, if you look at the Mishnah, it's punctuated, right? Share with a tzera. Which means chain, or the collar, the necklace that the animal has. And again, it's talking about, is this called a burden on the animal, or because the animal needs it and wears it all the time, then otherwise the animal's going to run away. So no, that's not a burden. That's just what the animal wears, right? So suddenly he's going from share chain to sheer melody. So you could say, oh, this is a Gaval Hasidic Torah. It's okay. It doesn't, it doesn't hold water etymologically, but it's a Gaval Torah. But then I looked into it, and so if you look in Jasper, you look in dictionaries, you discover that there is an actual, you don't have to wait for Chassidus. It's in the etymology. It's to say, many people say, and I'm talking about people who never heard of Chassidus or wouldn't, consider Chassidus as in this domain, they say it really is connected. Because what is a melody? What is a song other than a chain of notes that follow each other and that lead to a particular place? That's why shir is called shir, right? Is to say there's a procession, and in the same word is related to. You may know the Aramaic word. Probably it's in Hebrew now as well. Shayara. In the Mishnah, it means caravan, right? But I think it's used in modern Hebrew for procession. Is to say if some big dignitary, comes, so makes a mess and they close all the streets and you can't get to Yerushalayim for the whole day. So why is that? Because there's a shayara, because there's a procession with, the Nasi Amdina, the Rosh Hashanah, and the visiting dignitary that they're going through the streets. That's a shayara. So it really is to say, yes, it is a beautiful Hasidic insight, but it's not only that. It's built into the word at the most basic level. Okay, so he says. Yeah, he says, and so in other words, that's what song is meant to have you do. It's meant to have you go from level to level, and then he says to surrender something of the lower level in order to get to the upper level. Right? So that's the next thing he's going to say. So bittul hayesh, right? So. And then he explains, "V'chanoda shlo yuchal es habas miyesh liyesh ela imkein nasa yesh tchila bechina ayin, bechinas ayin." This again is a teaching based from the Maggid of Mezrich, that how do you have one thing and it transforms into something else? The thing is whatever it is. How does it move into becoming something else? It only happens if it first drops the baggage of its initial existence. Right? And the example is, as he's about to say, well, I'll read the Hebrew. As you go to a higher level, obviously there's a greater blessing. Is to say, you get more bounty, you get more energy, you get more dynamic vitality. You're at the higher place, but you have to drop some baggage. Right? The famous example of a seed. A seed will simply remain a seed. Actually, there are some seeds that don't germinate. But if a seed is going to germinate and become a fruit, a tree, a fruit, a vegetable, it has to decompose. And then something even more beautiful comes. And similarly, I'm going to just in Hebrew, I'm going to start sort of just reading it in English on the fly. Just so that we make sure that we get, a little further here. It says it's the same way with people's neshamas, with our souls, with angels. If you want to get to a higher place with a greater level of awareness, then you have to drop the lower level of awareness. Now, he doesn't say this here, but I'm sure he knows this in the back of it. Amazing. There's this amazing Gemara that talks about an Amora who went from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, and he was learning the Bavli, but then he wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael and he wasn't getting it. And he said, no, first you have to forget the Bavli. What's that? Rabbi Zera. So that is to say. Because otherwise, with what you know, and how can you go on to the next level? So, betosefet hasaga. So, so then he talks about the mentioned again. This is all from the letter of the Holy Hashem. there's this pillar between the lower Gan Eden and the upper Gan Eden. The Baal Shem Tov describes this a beam that you enter into. You go in, and you go to the higher place. So, and that's how he reads it. V'zeh kol bali hashir yotzim b'hasagatan. So they have to leave the comprehension that they have, which is not wrong, but which somehow is obviously inadequate. And you can be drawn up to go to a higher level by means of song. So that's what song does. Just say song is. So again, I mean, I could stop right there. That's the whole evening. It's been great meeting you all. It's been great. Robertson Judy is going to tell you about more classes. It'll be a gewalt. I mean, you could stop right there. But this to say that you see already that this is not entertainment. This is not, I got a new CD and it was very nice, and I didn't like all the cuts. I liked some cuts. This is a whole different mode of discourse. This is that, what Nigun is supposed to do is to enable you to transition from level to level and to drop something as you move to the next level. So that's, it's just, I mean, in other words, it's a challenging thing. It's not simple. It's really extraordinarily challenging. So what am I meant to drop? What am I meant to add? How do I? And I'm going to say something else. I mean, this piece is completely unknown. I mean, I think, I know it's been presented in a variety of modalities, but I want to drill a little deeper. Because first of all, he goes on. There's a middle paragraph and there's a final paragraph. I'm going to go to the final paragraph, but I want to challenge what I just said, because Shlomo would always say, open your heart. There's to say, stories would often have two levels. You get one level of the story and it's already good, and you think, okay, it's a goodbye. Now I can go to the kitchen and get coffee or something. No, that's just, then there's the open your heart level, right? So I think it's the same way here as well, because it's not, I don't think he's saying that you completely lose everything you had. Everything you had, why were you there in the first place? Even in the example of the seed, the seed is not completely lost. The seed, the energy, and certainly now with the DNA, the instructions, the materials, but also the nutrients that begin, and all of that goes into the fruit that's eventually going to come. So it's not lost. Yes, it's dropped on one level, but it's brought to a whole new level. Similarly, I would say, the truth is, even now, I mean, I don't know what Yerushalmi, Rabbi Zera was learning, but it probably was much harder than even Yerushalmi now. Is pretty challenging. But I would say that as challenging as Yerushalmi is now, I would venture to say that it would be even harder to learn it without the Bavli. With Bavli, easy. But you go through the Sugi and the Bavli, and then maybe you can, grab Yerushalmi. So on the one hand, you have to forget the Bavli to get to Yerushalmi. On the other hand, if you don't learn the Bavli, you're probably not going to get to Yerushalmi. So that is to say, as you're dropping it, you're also still holding on to it. And the challenge. So now with that, I think that helps me explain what he does, not in this next big paragraph, but go to the second column, right? On the top of top of the second column, and you want more text?
No, the English.
Oh, I'm sorry. These are my notes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not translated. It's not. But I mean, I'll. What is your name, sir? Chaim. So, but help me to expansively if I need to. If I'm assuming too much in the Hebrew, then I mean, in the second one, I won't even read the Hebrew. I'll just speak English. Yeah. Okay. So you remember there were two brothers, right? There's Yuval and Yaval, and I sort of cracked this joke, which remains a mystery. They couldn't have called them Yekusiel. They couldn't have called them I don't know what Rafael Chaim Simcha. Yuval and Yaval. But I'm saying it as a joke, but there's a very deep reason why they're so close. Maybe this has to do with this Torah, because they're working in concert. They're working together in a very deep way. You can't have one. Now I'm going to say it. So he says, Yuval is what he said, is that the musical instrument or the song is meant to move you from place to place as you drop one and go on to the next. But again, I'm sort of assuming that not completely lost. And then Yaval is Huaya Avi Yoshev Oel Umikna. He was the one who that is to say what we would call a pastoral nomadic life. Sarahana, Chen, good. So nice to have you here. So, sweetheart, there's a seat over here. Over here. No, but I want you to. I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see it. Let's see it. Are there more? Is there more text? Is there more? Okay. So he says. So what about Yaval? And what is this? Being in a tent and taking care of cattle. Like, what's that about? So what is a tent? He quotes what we say in from Tillim, every morning. The Shemesh Sam Ohel, that the sun has a tent in the sky. At least the way we see it. Actually, I just saw sunset. We were visiting friends in Tel Aviv Thursday night, and it's one of the that you see, just so beautiful. You see the sun. It looks like it's just dropping into the ocean, like plunk into the ocean. And I wasn't there for sunrise, but I'm assuming that, like just sun, rising out. I saw it once at the time of birth at the Hama. You see the sun sort of rising out of the ocean. So there's this tent, right? So what does it mean for as a lesson for us? So it says, Kidei Shir Lashemesh. So that is to say that that we should have a desire when there is some kind of a tent. What does a tent mean in the spiritual life? It says it's bechinas makif. So you see this language often in Chassidus. Rabbi Nehemia talks about it. You see Chabad talks about it. Goes back to the Holy Ari. There is Panimi, right? Panimi maybe is a little easier to understand. Is to say it's an insight that I've internalized. Like, I really get it. Whatever it is that you're talking about. Like whether it's an insight, it's a Torah, it's a learning, it's a perspective, it's a skill, it's a way of functioning in the world that I really have internalized. That's a panimi. A makif is something that I perceive is out there. It's what in English I would call aspirational, right? It's something that I'm aspiring to, but I know I'm not there yet. But because I have an awareness of it, it somehow surrounds me, and it's beckoning me, it's leading me, it's making me want to get to that place. And as Rabbi Nehemia says, that what happens is at some point you work hard enough, and if you strive hard enough, you will internalize that makif, and it will become a pnimi. And guess what happens? Baruch Hashem, the instant that you internalize the makif and it becomes a pnimi, another makif will immediately appear. Another makif will immediately show up. It's like another enveloping circumferential presence will immediately appear that you don't get, but that's still beckoning to you. And that's the whole purpose of life. Because if you internalize what you didn't get and now I get it, okay, so Mazel Tov, Gaval, now I'm ready to die. Like it's all over. So but Baruch Hashem, there's always a new makif that opens up and say, oh, I still got to do, which is great. In Baruch Hashem, we all have work to do. So that's the meaning of the ohel. That's the meaning of the tent. So this is to say the tent provides the aspiration of where I need to go next. So it relates to this dynamic of letting go of the baggage. You let go of the baggage. So if you take Bittul Hayesh literally, you might think, well, then it's nothing. Wait a minute, but if I'm nothing, I don't have an aspiration. Where do I go to the next level? So in other words, it's surrendering baggage, but I still feel I have an aspiration. I know I need to get to the next level. So that is to say, Rabbi Zera didn't say, oh, Gaval, I got to forget the Bavli, so suddenly becomes a complete Amaritz who doesn't know Aleph Beis. Why is he going to Eretz Yisrael? Apparently, he still knew something. Right? So you can't take this literally. He didn't forget everything. He certainly remembered that he has this aspiration to go to the higher level. So that's the dynamic. You somehow drop the baggage, but you're still there, and you still feel the pull of the higher level, and you get to the higher level. Okay, so that's why the second paragraph is so important. It's not just about dropping baggage. Yeah. Okay. So and then he more. So what about the animals, right? It's okay. He's in a tent, right? I mean, on the level of Pshat, it means nomadic herders. But what does it mean on this Hasidic level? So he says, because he says Yaval Chamorim. So beautiful. He quotes a pasuk in this is a pasuk in Shoftim. Yaval, it's the same, mamish the same as Yaval Lachamorim, which means I think the English translation, there are porridge for the animals. It's animal food. So when humans eat, humans like to have different. Please put the veggies over here. Please put the rice over here. Please put the tofu over here. Don't mish the whole thing into one mishmash. But animal food might have the same nutrients, but it's often like a sort of like a cholent, like a mixture. All the stuff that's in together. So that's the way the Alter takes that. That is to say, it's not clearly defined. That's what makes it a makif. Part of what is a makif is that I don't really get it. So I don't have clarity, I don't have definition. And precisely the fact that I don't have definition means I have to work to sort things out. Right? So that too is part of the aspirational work that that I have to do. So I think that's what I'm very much that the Torah or, and that enough. I mean, even if we only had this piece, I have several more pieces. Esther Rachel Amuna. Esther, could you please sit over here? There's a seat waiting for you right over here, sweetheart. All right. So, I mean, that alone is, I mean, you see the level of work that this takes. That is to say, this is challenge. This is not like, again, my ears are blasted, and I couldn't avoid, I couldn't avoid hearing this even if I wanted to avoid hearing this. No, this is the very most intense level of work. Because what it's saying is, every time I'm working with a nigun, what am I being asked to surrender? how to surrender it and still have enough left within me to be able to move to the next place, which is the makif, which is the surrounding level that is beckoning me, that is calling me. I mean, you see the amount of work that a nigun is asking us to do, as the Alter Rebbe explains it. So, what do we do at this point? How about, could we do Ruach? Is that okay? We all know Shlomo's Ruach. I think it first appeared. I don't know. I have a partisan feeling for the very early albums. I don't know if he sung them that much later, but this is on album number 1, or this is on Hanasham Allah, or it's on Sparking After. I forget which one, but the very, very first releases. So, Matasio, you wanna start it? So I want to talk about silence for a moment. Thank you for holding the silence. I'm reminded, and I have to apologize to my, first of all, my family is here. This is Rebbetzin Lori, Wolf Polen. I don't know that, I'm not sure that I'm a rabbi, but I'm sure that she's a Rebbetzin. And my daughters, Sarah Hannah Dahan and Esty Mallard. I'm so honored that you're here. So you've heard this before. I'm sure you probably heard most of this before. So I'm grateful for your indulging me. But so I always talk about, there is this I'm blocking on his name right now. It'll come to me. But he's one of the great Talmidim of the Mizrach Magid. So he says, Habocha b'shir at the end of Ishtabach, at the end of Sukkot, we sum it all up, and we say Haboche b'shirei zimra, that Hashem chooses shirei zimra, right? Songs of melody. It says, well, these are very close to being. It's the Or HaMeir. The Or HaMeir, not as well known. I mean, should be much, much more well known, but one of the great, great disciples of the Mezritch Magid, Or HaMeir, Rav Zev Wolf of Zhytomyr. Zev Wolf of Zhytomyr. So he says, he explains it this way. He says, shir is a song and zimra is melody. So why the doubling? So he said a little differently. He says, Habocher b'shiarei. The Rabboni Shalom, a little tongue in cheek. I hope he won't mind. The Rabboni Shalom loves the good nigun the same as everybody else. The Rabboni Shalom just loves good nigunim. But what the Rabboni Shalom even more is the silence after nigunim. Right? Habocher b'shiarei zimra. What's left after the nigun stops? Because what's left after the nigun stops is the reshimo, is the silent reverberation, which is a completely different silence than the silence before the nigun. The silence before the nigun is, I'm waiting for it to stop, which is very good, which is wonderful. The silence after the nigun holds all the notes, holds all the vibrations, holds all the emotions, holds. Maybe that's what holds what you dropped, as well as what you have aspired to and what you have achieved. All of that is held in the silence. So that's the most important part. That's the most important part. If you don't have the silence, then you're absolutely missing the point of the nigun. That's when you get it. You get it when you take those. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes of silence. 20 seconds is a long time. Even 10 seconds, you can get a lot in 10 seconds. Okay, Rebbe Lori wants me to take. I was gonna, which is that, I'd love to hear your. Okay, here's the speech. The speech is, I'd love to hear your questions, but I have a lot of materials, and please hold your questions until the end. But I'm not speech because my Rebbe sort of tapped me on the shoulder and said I should speak. What is your name, please? Yedida. Yedida. Okay.
Sorry to go back. What you signed before that was so beautiful. Was it a specific nigun or just?
Which nigun? The ruach?
Just now.
That's Karbach. That's Karbach. It's Shlomo Karbach. It's on. I mean, it's in the discography. It's either is it the first album or the second album? I forget. Yeshamalach or Borchinach. It's simply a one. I love it for all kinds of reasons. So Esty wrote a beautiful parish on it. But also because it straddles the two levels of nigun that people often talk about. Talk about nigun with words and nigunim without words. And something controversial. This is me. You're free to dismiss it. But I often hear people say nigunim without words are higher than nigunim with words. Right? With all due respect, that's not my derech. That's not. It's two different modalities, and there's no reason to think that one is better or deeper or higher. The words concretize and give specificity and give anchorage, and the nigunim without words, people will say that you're not encumbered by. Well, maybe you're not encumbered, but how do you know where you go when you're not encumbered? it's only when you have the definitional specificity of the words that you're able to go to that other place. So I see it more as a shuttling back and forth. To me, that's part of the avoda of nigunim. Yeah, nigunim without words are just amazing. Nigunim with words are equally amazing. And in many Chassidus, in many Tishin, you see it many places, they will shuttle between words, no words, no words, words. And so what I love about Ruach is that it has a word, but it's just one word. It's just one word. That's the only word, Ruach. So it's like it's at the cusp of this polarity, right? Which I don't think is oppositional or even hierarchical. It's at the cusp of this polarity between nigunim with words and nigunim with words. It's a third category, which is nigunim with one word. Right? So that's why Ruach is a gewalt. I mean, again, you see the genius of the late Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach. Kinds of reasons. I'm afraid I'm going to go off on a riff, and then I'm going to hear why didn't I finish all this all of the papers that I brought. But sometimes you see that he would just lift something out of a much bigger, again, I didn't say I was going to do this, but sort of like when there's all this Hashanas, Hoshana Rabbah, there's all the piyutim Hoshana Rabbah from Hakaler, so amazing. So like go on in So, and it's lifted. There's all these piyutim from Revelation, and goes on, and even that particular one goes through the alphabet. It's huge, and like part of the Gaonas is to sort of zero in on particular words, and he obviously chose them for a particular reason, and then of course to think of a nigunim, to set the nigunim to these words. And this one is a little long, but it's 4 words, right? Kol Penu Elai V'Hivashu. Penu Elai V'Hivashu is actually from, Hakaler got it from Sefer Yeshayahu, right? So that you have this whole lineage. You have Karbach, you have Hakaler, you have Yeshayahu Hanavi. It's deep. What I'm saying is, in general, again, this is sort of the lesson, as some people came in a little later. I'm just saying, nigunim are avoda. Nigunim are serious work. The more deeply you go into it, the more you'll get out of it. The melody as melody, if it has words, then the words, where the words come from, the connection between the words and the setting, it just keeps getting richer and richer and deeper and deeper. So, okay, well, thank you, Yedida. Yedida, thank you for asking. So the next piece, now I want to get to Derech Melech, because the PSXner, yes, I'm not ready with this yet. I have one that I didn't have photocopied. It's short, and I realized that there's already so many papers. By the way, Rebbetzin, what's our timeline? I forgot to ask you. We started at 7:30, pretty much on time.
We have until 5 in the morning.
babysitters, or Okay, should we say like roughly 9 o'clock or so? Is it like another half hour? Is it? Because I don't want to get some sense of. Okay, good.
Some sense.
Okay, so this one I didn't photocopy. I have others that have been photocopied. This one is short, but I just love this one. Oh, so the Piasner Rebbe, so Kalonymus, Kalman, Shapira, Piaseczner. Many of you know he's now. People have called him the Rebbe of the Warsaw Ghetto. I'm not fully happy with that because first of all he was the Rebbe in Piaseczner. He was the Rebbe and was only the ghetto was 2.5, 3 years. So it's important to know how he died and what he was teaching during that terrible period and how he said. It's all very, very important. I would say it's equally important, maybe even more important, to Rebbe when Polish Jew was flourishing and thriving, and he was teaching, and he was extraordinary. So his legacy goes with the title, the Rebbe of the Warsaw Ghetto. There is a collection of his drashos that he said in Piaseczner, 20s and 1930s, and that collection is called Derech HaMelech. I highly recommend it. So this is a piece. This is a Rosh Hashanah piece, Derech HaMelech Tafresh Tzadi, which would be 1929. It was still 1929, but in the Jewish calendar it was already Tafresh Tzadi. So it's just wonderful. Oh my God. Okay, so he talks about Trua, Ashrei Yodei Trua. Happy, after we blow the shofar, we say these verses. Ashrei Adam Yodei Trua Hashem B'or Panecha Yahalechun. Happy is the people who knows the sound of the Trua, the sound of the shofar. We will go by the light of your countenance, Hashem. So he begins his drush. I'm not gonna, just gonna, which I think is, So he says there's a medrash in Shir Hashirim. There's medrash Shir Hashirim Rabbah, which is also, I probably say this. I'm going to say the same thing about every sefer that I mention. Shir Hashirim Rabbah is just amazing, Anyway, as I say, it's the medrash on the Song of Songs. In chapter 2 of Shir, right? I think that the older translation used to be, I am the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valleys. I am the rose of Sharon, the lily of the valleys. So the medrash begins, Amar Knesset Yisrael, which means the collective spirit of the Jewish people. Rabbanu Shalom, B'shah Geinecha Bi, Ani Meratevet Ma'asim Tovim B'shana V'omeret Shira. When you penetrate your gaze upon me, then I give out Meratevet. Rotev is like a sauce, is liquid, is a dewy. The word that I like to use is succulence, right? It's a dewiness that comes out of the rose, right? It might be like dew, but it actually comes out of the rose. And Ma'asim Tovim, we do good deeds like the Shoshana, like the rose. Actually, forgive me, but I'm going to quote Emily Dickinson. There's a poem, and it goes something like this. Essential oils are wrong. the attar from the rose. Attar is a name for rose oil. And talks about how just by the sun, or sometimes you have to sort of actually press it. So here, this to say, so she gets this very, very deeply, that, the rose has essential oils, right? Flowers have essential oils, and sometimes they get pressed out, but some they just kind of ooze out on their own. So the Medrash says, we are Knesset Yisrael, and we have mitzvahs and just so much beauty and fragrance within us. And what makes it come out of our pores is sha'a sha'at mamik einecha bi, when we feel the Ribono Shel Olam sort of gazing at with a loving gaze. It's sort of like, if you have somebody who you love much, let's say a child, and the child feels that, why do we come to our kids' recitals? Like, oh my God, just learn the violin. They're going to be scratching this violin thing for if you have children or grandchildren, mitzvah Shem, we should all be zocha, or your students or loved ones, whoever it may be. Why do we go to recitals? Because they know we're watching. But from behind, and it brings out the best when you know that somebody who really loves you is watching you. So that's what the Medrash is saying. The Medrash is saying that when the Ribono Shel Olam loves us all so much, and when we feel the Ribono Shel Olam is looking at us with loving eyes, just brings in us, and we do mitzvahs not because I just learned in Shulchan Aruch and I got to do this, or like of all. It's not about chiyuv, obligation. It's about it just comes out of us like out of the rose. That's the image. As if, and then I send quotes, and this is, I want to say it's the genius of the P.S. but it's the genius of the P.S. Setzner is to have seen the genius that's already there in the Medrash, right? And the genius in the Medrash is to see the genius that's already in the pasuk in Shir Shira. In other words, it's all there. It's all there. Nobody says anything new, right? But the genius is you just have to see it. For heaven's sake, you just got to see it. Okay, so the Medrash juxtaposed is another pasuk that we all know. Shir Hamalos mima makim krasicha Hashem. I'm familiar with that pasuk. Many of us who come, if you're shulgo, whatever, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. But if you're familiar with the liturgy on the time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, you say that psalm again and again every day. You open up the Holy Ark and the Shir Hamalos, and it's like Gavald. I'm standing so many sins, and I have to repent, and I'm calling God steps. Like I'm the lowest of the lowest of the lowest sinners, and I'm calling to God from the depths. Right? That's the way I think it's normally understood. At least that's the way I understand it. That's the way it's typically the way the way we see it. Right? So I'm calling from the depths, meaning from the depths of my despair, from the depths of my brokenness, from the depths of my awareness that I am a sinner and that I have no right to ask for a new year, but I'm asked for a great new year anyway, right? That's Shir Hamalos Mimamakim. So the genius of the Medrash is in the exact opposite way. The depth is when I feel how deeply Hashem is looking at each and every one of us and is loving each and every one of us, right? It's like I'm that 6-year-old kid who just got the first violin and barely is scratching out a tune, and maybe can barely get the fingers in the right place and the bow, and I'm so embarrassed, and I'm so ashamed, and I'm so afraid. But mom and dad are in the audience watching me, and I feel their love so deeply, and that gives me the courage and the strength, and maybe even a little bit of the skill to get a decent sound at this recital. That's the Shir Malos Mimamakim. So it's a completely different understanding of the Mimamakim, and that Mimamakim from whatever Tehillim, Psalm, what is it, 1, right? The Medrash relates to the Ani Chavatzelas HaSharon, I'm the rose of Sharon, Shoshanat HaAmakim, right, the lily of the valleys. So in other words, it's not the valley of I'm so horrible, I'm so terrible, but it's the valley that I'm feeling. I'm feeling the loving gaze of the Ribono Shel Olam, and that loving gaze is enabling me to bring out the very best that I have inside of me. So that's the P.S. Etzner. I'm just going to summarize this because I know you don't have the text. That's the way we should be singing Shira. We can and should be singing Shira, as he says. Yeah. Right. Well, okay, I'll read it. He says, the whole universe is with us to sing the song of Ribono Shel Olam, to sing songs in honor of Ribono Shel Olam. And it's not only the world is waiting, but the truth is our own neshamas are waiting for that to happen. I'm waiting for me. Should we do another one?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do yeah, right. So this is a Malava Nigan, and even it's already what is it, Sunday night, right? But it's still until Tuesday you can make Havdalah, right? So I'm still making Havdalah. Halavai we should be Zocha, and I have because I've been privileged to be with just wonderful family that Shabbos is so deep that it carries you at least into Tuesday, if not more, right? So you're making Havdalah like all week, meaning you're bringing the light of Shabbos. Definitely do this. So if you don't know the words, it's from Hamavdil. You don't need the words. It's very, very beautiful. I'm not planning this, it's just coming out. I don't know why it's coming out, but a lot of the nigunim that I've noticed have to do with calling out the name of Hashem. So this one is from Hamav Ho, and it ends with Miyom Biad Loila, from day until night. So this stanza is Krasicha Ka Hoshieni. I have called you God, Hoshieni, save me. Orach Chaim Todi'eni, let me know the path of life. This is, it's like so important. Let me know the path of life. Midalus Tevatseni, from poverty, which means on the pshat level, absolutely. It's God forbid we don't want that. We should all have to do all the good deeds and mitzvahs that we want to do. But it also means spiritual poverty. Spiritual poverty means that we don't get it. Sort of, not the same thing, but sort of like, there are wise people who shine with wisdom, and there are people who don't get it. And the deeper sadness is they don't know that they don't get it. So that's, spare us that kind of poverty. Midalus Tevatseni Miyom Biad Loila. From the day, meaning from that Shabbos day, until Motzei Shabbos, and is carry the brightness and the wisdom of Shabbos into this night, into Motzei. We'll be able, hopefully, God will, Hashem, carry it of the week. So here you hear it, right? I mean, this is something that's a real takeaway. It's like you could hear the silence, right? You could hear the silence. It was the silence was so rich that you could say a Birkas Hamazon after that silence. So, yeah. Okay. So we'll do. So here's a This is this one I did. What's that here? Don't worry about the time. Okay. Okay. So this is Setzner, but what we have from the Setzner, and the truth is, it is a miracle. It is a miracle. I guess, the only sefer that the Setzner had published in his lifetime was a sefer called Chovos HaTalmidim, which is very, very important. It was published in 1932. It was for young. It was a handbook of Chassidus for young students. It could be for any age. He aimed it at young students, and if not for the milk can, almost nothing. It's just, I mean, other than the Chovos HaTalmidim. So it really is a miracle. Just to say, well, the Eish Kodesh is somewhat more well known, and if you're not familiar,
I might need to explain the milk can.
yeah. So the milk can is like he had these manuscripts, and by the way, this is another little thing to, well, it's not little, but just as terms of background, why was not more published in his lifetime? The answer is because he had no money. We live in such a different world. This electronic printing, and it's like costs almost nothing. In those days, many authors, and this is true of Ishbitz, it's true of the Sod Yesharim, many Sfarim didn't get published. They remained in manuscript, and if by the grace of God, they may have survived. But if they didn't survive, then we simply don't have them. Many Ishbitz manuscripts were just destroyed. So he didn't have money because he was supporting a yeshiva. It was a yeshiva called Das Moshe in Warsaw. They had 300 students. In those days, it was that maybe now. Mir has in those days 300 students was huge, and none of them had any money. So if he, bread and milk and cookies, then they would starve. So it was all on his shoulders. There was never any money, so it didn't get published. And then in late 1942 and early 1943, he saw that he probably wasn't going to survive the war, or it might not be likely. He still hoped, but he saw that it would be wise to bury it. And there was the Onyx Shabbos operation where Emanuel Ringelblum, a historian, was documenting what was going on in Warsaw. And Rabbi Shapiro's first cousin, his name was Shimon Huberband, was a totally Hasidic Yid, but he was also a trained historian, and he was involved in that Onyx Shabbos operation. And he assisted Rabbi Shapira in getting his manuscripts buried either in the Onyx Shabbos or right next to the Onyx Shabbos in a sealed milk can. And it did survive the war. It was dug up after the war. It was brought to the Jewish Historical Institute, and now I think they're mostly digitized. Just in recently, there was a great Israeli scholar by the name of Daniel Reiser, wonderful academically trained scholar who's also a very, very, very Erlich Yid, very serious Jew who has digitized, and you can see full color reproductions of the manuscript. One of the things that you see is that the Rebbe, despite everything that was going on, the loss of his and everybody being taken to the gas, he is editing and he's revising his manuscripts until the last second. In other words, the care that he was devoting to this, it's like it was clear that he hoped that they would survive. He didn't know, but he hoped that they would, and that this was not something for a small group of Jews huddled in freezing cold, starving in 1942, but that this was for generations to come. So, I mean, that's why I say it's a miracle that we have these writings. I think I don't exaggerate. Any event, this is chapter 9 of one of his farm, and he talks about how to work with a nigun. It's really, really beautiful. It is to say, it's actually instructions on working with a nigun. This is the side that has the nikudot, right, the vowels. So he says, Kach lecha eze tnua shel nigun. He says, take I think like a fragment or like I would assume like da 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 da. Maybe not the whole nigun, but work with a section of a nigun. Tasevas menacha elakir. He's showing you again. That's the whole point of this whole session. That nigun is not just nice entertainment or something to be blasted out of a loudspeaker at a wedding. But God bless weddings. We should have everybody should go to many weddings. But that this is serious spiritual work. Right? Turn your face to the wall. Maybe I'll just translate. He says, or just close your eyes and consider or think that you're standing. Really, he means here before Hashem, right? What's the glory? Meaning you're standing before Hashem. That's one of the main things of davening in general. Why do we take 3 steps back, 2 steps forward? Why do we do all that? Because we have to see clearly that we're standing before someone. Dalef neimi ata omed. That's what it means. Right? And with our broken heart, which is not necessarily bitterness, not necessarily a bad thing. Just broken heart means that you're, again, like we said before, that you're surrendering, that you're giving up. But even when you're giving up, you still have an element of the self, and you know that you want to go somewhere. You pour your heart to the Rabbanu Shalom in song and in nigun. I think Shira means usually songs with words, and nigun typically means melodies without words, right? But you see, again, you don't have to choose one. Both are gewalt. Be careful, they come out of the depths of your heart, and then you will feel that your soul is going out in that rinana, in that melodious song. And then he says that the stage 2 is sometimes we use a nigun to wake us up, but he says eventually the nigun takes over, right? So that's a very important point. This is to say, we've been doing it a little bit here, but I think you could do it much more on your own. As don't give nigun too soon, right? That's like one of the things that we would see with Shlomo, maybe not with every concert or every setting, sometimes the learning after the concert, like if the mood is right, you could sing the same nigun for 20 minutes. Right? I remember one time we sang, and it's another nigun that's not on our list, but anybody, I don't know. I didn't time it, but it was 20 minutes. It was 40 minutes. It just kept going. Just kept going. It's the most beautiful thing. It's the most powerful thing. And sometimes you can't plan it ahead of time. It just was right, and people got up and they started dancing, and they just didn't stop. So which means that you're not singing the niggun anymore. The niggun is singing you. And then the next paragraph, he says, you know, you always wondered about what a niggun was. Well, of course, the Rebbe is talking about himself. You know, it's sort of like, he's obviously talking about Hasidim who is on the level of wondering, what does a niggun do? This is part of the work of niggun. Halavai, we should all be on the level of wondering what a niggun does and how it does it, right? What are these sounds? What is this, how does it go? The rising fifth, the lowing, aliot v'maheng. The
Rising fifth.
The rising fifth, yeah. So, so going up, going down. What is that? What is it? What does it do? Why does it have that effect? And why sometimes the notes are stretched? Why sometimes they're shorter? But now you to say that I think what he's saying, I'm not going to read, that the niggun conforms to the shape of your soul, or the soul conforms to the shape of your niggun. And again, it's sort of like, forgive me, but I use analogies from what I read elsewhere. And I was reading this article about string theory, this theory in modern physics. So not that I know it, believe me, I have no understanding of it whatsoever. But people, if you read a little bit of it in a popular book, you think, oh, it's like the vibrating strings. That's what creates, let's say, the elementary particles, and that's true. But what they don't tell you is that every string is vibrating in a particular shape. What makes the theory so complicated is that it's in 10-dimensional space. But the vibe of the space. So it's so it's much more enfolded. The string maybe creates the space, but the space creates the string. And that's why sort of the greatest minds in physics alive today are still struggling with this and trying to make sense of it. I mean, that's what it's saying here. So we all know that sound, that melody, that music is about, it's vibrating strings, right? It really is vibrating strings. But what the Rebbe is saying is that the strings are vibrating in a dimensional space, and the dimensional space is your own neshama. Right? It's mamish. It's like I don't know. I'm sure he didn't know string theory, but it's like that's mamish. That's what he's saying. That the vibrations take the shape of your neshama and influence your neshama, as in the same way, reciprocally, your neshama is giving energy to the niggun. So you are in dialogue with the niggun is taking you over in a good way and lifting you up, like we piece from Yaval and Yuval. You remember that one? But also you are shaping and taking the niggun, conforming to the shape of your neshama. So the reason why the power of the niggun is so internal is because it's having this dialogue literally with the shape of your soul. So you're discovering and you're refining and you're elevating of your neshama as you're working with the niggun. There's much more, but I think I'm gonna let you look. It has kudos. It has dots. You can learn it yourself. So I'm just gonna leave it with that. Let's do one more niggun, and then very briefly I'll get to the last text, and then we'll wrap, because I know that some of the senior citizens like me need babysitters. I don't know, l'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Shakol. Yeah. How could I forget? Yeah. So this is a vision. It's a vision. Yeah. So I learned this niggin. It's very dear to me and my wife learned because we learned this. We were in Ukraine, and we visited the oil and the synagogue of the Holy Baal Shem. It was really, really amazing experience. It's a whole long tell you the story some other time, but anyway, we learned the story, and it was being sung by a chazan, a wonderful chazan named Chaim David Gerson. That's how I know this thing, but it's a vision. It's from the last stanza of Yedidah Higalana Ufros Havivi Esuka Shalom Acha. Beautiful. Thank you so much. If anybody came late and didn't, this is Rabbi Matisyahu Brown. So,
This is Nehemia Polen. I don't think we said that yet.
So okay. So this is on the other side. So he it's Parshas Pinchas. I'm going to go to the Medrash. He quotes a Medrash in Tanchuma. It's a Medrash Tanchuma B'Chukosai. Again, Derech Agav, when you're learning Chassidut, there's one of learning the Chassidus and quote unquote, figuring it out, making sense of it. And that's a challenge, right? It comes easier, it comes harder. The more you do, it's a little easier. Just keep in. So as you put the pieces together, you're learning a Pias Setzner, you're learning a Sfas Emes, you're learning Rabbi Nachman, you're learning a tradition from the Baal Shem Tov, and there's a Medrash here, there's a Gemara, there's a pasuk there, and you're putting this together and you're unpacking it and you're making sense of the pieces and the whole thing, and it's hard work, right, to do this if you've done it. So just remember that as hard as that is, you got to ask myself the question, what if I start, it's hard enough to figure out the Sfas Emes, right? Because that's, what if I start with this, right? I'm sitting with this, right? And 500 Chassidim are here. This is what the Rebbe started with. The Rebbe, so in other words, it's not figuring out what was said, but would I have ever thought to put that Medrash Tanchuma, first of all, would I know the Medrash Tanchuma? If I learned the Medrash Tanchuma, would I remember the Medrash Tanchuma? If I remember the Medrash Tanchuma, would I have made the juxtaposition to this parsha and to see how it fits in with the whole much wider structure that I'm trying to create here? You know what I'm saying? In other words, figuring out the Torah is where we are at. But to really understand the genius that's going on here, ask yourself after you, at least on some level, figure out the Torah, say, would I have ever in a bazillion lifetimes, in a bazillion reincarnations, have ever made these kinds of juxtapositions to come out with what I see in front of me? That's the greatness that I have to consider when I stand in awe in front of these great Rebbeim. Anyway, so he quotes a Tanchuma in Bechukosai, which quotes a verse from Mishlei, from Proverbs. It says, Chachmot b'chutz tarona b'rechavot titein kola. Right? That wisdom it shouts, wisdom sings or shouts outside, and in marketplaces, in the avenues, right? You hear the sound. That's the part in Mishlei. Shmuel bar Nachmani, Rabbi Yonasan, they were in the marketplace. So they were in the shuk, right? How far is the shuk from here? Not far, right? So they're in the shuk, and he asks him for, tell me a good shot, like, I want to hear great Dvar Torah. And he says, okay, but I want to come to the Beis Medrash. So, like, he didn't want to say it in the shuk. So the Talmud asked the Rebbe, he said, but wait a minute, the pasuk says that you could speak of wisdom even in the marketplace. So the Rebbe says, I see you know psukim, but you don't really know the depth here. Because when it says in the wide places, it doesn't mean out in the open. What it's really saying is in the place where they speak Torah expansively. And the only place where you can really expand and sort of get the breadth and the depth of Torah is when you're in a Beis Medrash, is when you're in an enclosed place like this. So that's the Medrash, and that's what he begins with. So again, the Medrash is already, like, I would have never thought of that pasuk in Mishlei and make this connection, and that's already, like, beyond my capacity. So I'm already in awe. But now the level of the Pias Setzner, who's just beginning his exposition, and he has a lot to say about nigun and melody. So let me tell you what I think is what is animating me in this juxtaposition. We're thinking about nigun, how to work with nigun. And if you've ever, played outside without an enclosure, it's actually, I think, because these walls do not limit. They're not limiting walls. They're walls of enclosure and reverberation. They really bring the notes and the melody into a much deeper place. And so the Piasetzner says, based on the Tanchuma, that that's exactly what happens with Torah. Yeah, if you're traveling, the Mishnah says, he quotes the Mishnah says that you should be learning Torah even on the road. Absolutely, you should be learning Torah. But you're only going to get the depth of it if you're in a reverberative place, in a place where you can hear what's bouncing off the walls, when your chaverim, your friends, your chavrusas, your rebbeim, your talmidim are also bouncing things off of each other and off the wall, so that there's an expansiveness, there's a reverberative capacity that enriches and deepens the whole experience of saying the Torah, and which for him is the same as singing the nigun. Oh, so he says also that when we say when we read the Torah, of course he's supposed to say it with trop. I have the privilege of hearing my son-in-law who learns the parsha with Moroccan trop. There's Yemenite trop. There's all these wonderful different trops. I know a little bit Ashkenazi trop, but it's the same thing. We're learning Gemara. We're learning Mishnah. There's a traditional tune. There's a traditional melody. There's a chant, and he says the chant is the richness of the words of the Torah. So I think I'm going to maybe summarize this. Well, you know what? Let me go to the second column. The second column, the top of the second column. So he says, "Hakdusha shebat Torah mitpashetet b'kerav ha'ish." The holiness of the Torah spreads within us and in our limbs. So that's another thing to keep in mind. I do want to say this. I think that this is very important teaching from beginning, not beginning with, but transmitted through the Holy Baal Shem. That in Chassidus we often talk about the holy letters, right? You probably, everybody has heard this, right? There's the holiness of the letters, and when you hear that, we often think, and it's not, it's correct. We often think about the shape of the letters, sort of like, sometimes we meditate on the shape of the letters, and that's all true. But you see it in this teaching here, and it absolutely goes back to the Holy Baal Shem and back much, much earlier, that when they talk about the holiness of the letters, they're talking about the holiness of the sound of the letters. That's the main meaning of the holiness of the letters. So that if you want to experience the holiness of Aleph, then yeah, you can think of this. That's certainly true, absolutely. But it's about ah and a. Remember when Rabbi Nachman does the great Torah about the picking the flowers for the bouquet? He doesn't say, the letters are looking at your eyes. He says you're saying the bays of Baruch, and you're saying the ruh. It's about the sound of the letters that you're feeling in your vocal cavity, and that is so embracing you, and yet you're embracing that you don't want to let go, but you have to do the rest of the davening, so you say, I'm going to take you with me. And I'm going to take you with me. It's a famous Rabbi Nachman teaching. And that's how you make the bouquet. So that's what he's saying here, is to say, the first enclosure, this house is so beautiful. Rebbetzin should be blessed, that the house should always be filled with simcha, nacha, shefa, chachma, good health, happiness, the voice of little children and grandchildren and disciples and disciples of disciples.
Amen.
Amen. So it's so beautiful. We hear the reverberation, right? We hear the reverberation, but he says, don't forget, the first reverberation is in your own vocal cavity. That's the first reverberation. So and he says it's a. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just go to the end if you're tracking the Hebrew, and if you're not tracking the Hebrew, I'm going to translate it anyway, so don't worry about it. The penultimate line of the first paragraph on that second column, we see where it says Gam haktalim nirtavim biktusha. You see it? I'm just picking on those 4 words. You see it? Gam haktalim nirtavim biktusha. Even the walls are dripping. By the way, it's the same word from the previous Torah. The same word in the previous Torah. You see it? Right? The walls are dripping with holiness. So here's the way I take this. I take this. What the Rebbe is saying. Maybe I'm lifting it off the page a little bit, but I hope I'm being faithful to what he has in mind here. Is that whenever you sing a nigun in a place, then the walls have a memory of the nigunim that were sung there before. So when you sing a nigun now, you're activating the memory. You're not only hearing the reverberation of the nigun that you're singing now, but you're hearing the reverberation of all the nigunim that were sung here beginning, right, from wherever you moved in, and who knows what was, hopefully, Kedusha was here before, and it goes back and back and back, and all of that is absorbed into the walls, and now is coming out at us in this gentle, sweet way that he says is like, is again like the drops of dew coming out of the walls. That's what you have to hear. Now, if I could just add an open your heart moment. So what I also saying, I mean, he's definitely also saying this, is that just as we benefit from the reverberations that are already here, that is to say, all of the beautiful shalashudas. I mean, I was zocha my wife and I were zocha to be here a few times. I suspect many of you were here many, 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 many times over many years. So just as the walls have those memories, the walls have those reverberations. Just as the walls of our heart and the vocal cavity have those memories, and that's really, really true. That is to say, I mean, I suspect. I mean, I'm not a musician, but I'm sure that Matisyahu could tell us what happens when your vocal cavity becomes not a neophyte, but really becomes trained. There's a depth, there's a memory, there's experience. You're singing not only with the voice you have now, but with every bit of voice you ever had whenever you sang before. And you're called upon to feel that. So it's a much, 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 much deeper experience. So all of that, but then, and this is the open your heart moment, I want to ask myself, what do I want to deposit in these walls now for the next time and the next person, and maybe the next shalashudas and the next Malava Malka, that they will be able to hear operations that I'm thinking of. If I'm benefiting from the Malava Malkas and the shalashudas that was going on for so many years, don't I want to leave a reverberation for those who are going to come? next week or next month or next year or next generation. Okay, I think let's end with a niggun maybe.
Can I say something? One little
Yeah,
three
sure.
sentence.
Sure.
Before my grandmother passed away, she took me with my mother to the B'nai Israel Shul in Pittsburgh that my great grandfather was the president of in 1920. And she had me put my foot in a place where he had done this to carve through like the wood stain to get to the real wood underneath, about 15 years ago. So we walked in, I had no idea what was going on. She said, I want you to put your foot here. Put my foot there. And she said, this is where your great grandfather would daven, left his footprint. And 2 days ago I woke up and I thought in Parshas Lech Lecha about the authenticity. He was telling his great grandchild when I was just whatever, and all his future generations, move aside the veneer, get to the authenticity underneath. And I just wanted to share that because I feel it connects a little bit with what.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. It's amazing. Tell us your name again, please.
Chaim
Chaim Kaplan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Beautiful.
How's your leg?
We up till 5 a.m.
Adina, so wonderful. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. Adina Ashri. So, should I do that one that I said? Or that's, or
It might be a solo.
people are familiar with? So, okay, you know what? I'll leave it up to the group. We could do a Shlomo Nigun that people are familiar with, or we could do one and don't know. But if you're, I think it's maybe the energy level is we should do a familiar one, and we'll leave that one for another time.
Oh, yes, there'll be another time.
She wants both. I think she wants the unfamiliar and then end with the familiar.
To the intuition.
Can you do the unfamiliar and then the familiar at the end?
Do you remember how I started it?
Yeah.
The
The feeling of it.
Oh, I got that. Okay, so here's the story. Okay, so Hannah and Esty, you have to get back to it. Okay, it's going to take maybe, realistically speaking, it's going to take probably just to unpack this. So there's a story. So this is a Carlebach melody, but it's at least it's the way I learned it. It's not from Shlomo Carlebach, but from Eli Chaim. And I heard it from Moshe Stepansky, who is a faithful disciple, a faithful chassid. And he said he heard it from Rabbi Eli Chaim Carlebach, Shlomo's twin brother. And it comes from Sons, so Sons is a great Hasidic yichus, a great Hasidic lineage, and when there are many strands of Sons, like all the great dynasties, but one of them is Bobov. Bobov comes from Sons, so but there's also Sons, and there's a Sonser Shtibel in Tzfat. I'm sure there must be others as well, but I know that one is very, very amazing. So I think this one comes from Tzfat. So the way I heard it, again, from Moshe Stepansky, who also knows it from Rebbe Eli Chaim, that in Sons, they don't always do Birchas Kohanim. The minhag there is that they only do Birchas Kohanim in Musaf, right? Even in Eretz Yisrael, right? Even in Eretz Yisrael. So, but when they do it, it's, Baruch Hashem now, they have many Kenan Hurricane, Yirbu, many Kohanim, there's many Levium. So the Levium and the Kohanim go out, it's in the middle of Musaf, and it turns out that B'li Ayin Hara, Baruch Hashem, Ken Yirbu, there's so many Kohanim, there's so many Levium, that the hands, it takes so long that they weren't getting back in time. If there's only a few Kohanim, some shows it only, Halavai should have one, but there's so many that it was taking a long time, and the Chazan was finishing, and they weren't ready to begin because they're still washing hands. So the minhag developed. This is just the most beautiful thing, that the Chazan sing a nigun in the middle of Kedushas Hayom. It is to say, in the Musaf, where Hasienu Hashem, I guess somewhere around there, look, they would stop with the words and they would sing this nigun in order, and the kahal, the most beautiful thing in the world is that instead of sort of, starting to say, hitting your neighbor with your elbow and beginning to schmooze, God forbid, it should never happen, everybody is holding the space, and they're singing the nigun together. So it's not that you're wasting, and nobody is drumming their fingers on the table. It becomes the most holiest moment when you're holding the space with the nigun while the Kohanim and the Levim are doing in the Beis HaMikdash. So it's just a most unbelievable thing. This is the nigun that they're singing while the Chazan and the Kahal are waiting for the Levium to finish their holy service of washing the hands of the Kohanim, that the Kohanim can all come back and do the Berachas Kohanim. If you get, I mean, that alone is worth the price of admission. Right? That's right. So here's the niggin. If I remember it correctly, it took me a long time to learn this niggin. And I also want to say that learning a niggin is avoda, right? Learning a niggin, singing a niggin is avoda. Learning a niggin is really is sacred service. So I think I have it. It goes like something like this. It's a 4-part niggin, and it's very subtle. I mean, is that amazing? I think it's amazing. I'm just I mean, in my ears, I'm hearing the best medrash with 5 people singing this while the Kohanim and the Leviim are slowly coming back. It's just like the most amazing thing. So thank you so much. Okay, one more from Rabbi Matisyahu.
Everybody knows.
Thank you first, Rabbi Nehemia, coming and teaching, and we hope you come again soon with the follow-up class, and to there's going to be classes every day this week at 12:30. So the Shlomo's Yahrzeit is coming up next week, Shabbos, I believe, and tomorrow Rabbi Shlomo Katz is going to be teaching at 12:30. He's going to join us on Monday. Rabbi Mimi Fagelson is going to be teaching here. Rabbi Yehuda Katz is going to be coming to teach. And on Thursday, Rabbi Yankel Shamish is going to be teaching. On the Yahrzeit on Sunday, God willing, Nimuna Witz and Ben Zion Solomon and Simcha Hochbaum and Raz Hartman, God willing.
Oh, wonderful.
Please start learning the quote there, Shlomo's Yahrzeit
So
coming up.
beautiful.
And thank you for coming this evening. And
Thank
please, if you'd like to help us, we exist here on the kindness of all of your generous donations. So if you'd like to participate in the class,
I'm
for the learning here.
taking care of you.
And thank all of you for doing this.